This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening. I am Steve Knight, Chair of the Rome Planning and Zoning Commission. It is 6:04 p.m. on Monday, October 5th, 2020. I will call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Rome Planning and Zoning Commission to order. This meeting is being conducted via video and telephone conference per the governor's office. I will now call roll to establish our quorum. If you'll just answer with your name when I call. Commissioner Steve Knight, that's me, aye. Commissioner Christy Narron. Christy Narron, are you there?
I, Christy Narron. I apologize.
Thank you. Thomas Cannon.
Hi, Thomas Cannon.
For network connection.
Robert Coleman.
Robert Coleman, aye.
Do I also have alternate one, Commissioner Christy King?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties also.
You're coming across good and clear. Thank you. And my alternate number 2, Commissioner Joanne Wilson.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum for this evening's meeting. At this time, I'd like to announce that our co-chair, Miss Ashley Majors, is no longer on this commission, but I would like to thank her for her past participation on this commission. At this time, I'll introduce Mr. Carvin Adkins, our city attorney, for a few words on conflicts of interest, as we do have a few of those this evening. Mr. Adkins?
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to remind everybody it is the duty of each member of the commission to evaluate their own potential conflicts. And we do have a conflict of interest provision in our code. And maybe it's best if I just read it to you a little bit. It just says no officer, and that would include members of the P&Z and alternates, shall participate in a vote or decision on a matter involving a business entity or real property in which the officer has a substantial interest if it is reasonably foreseeable that an action in the matter would confer an economic benefit on the business entity or the real property. And that is essentially quoting Chapter 171 of the Texas Local Government Code, which basically says the same thing. And in the event you do have a conflict, both the code and the state statutes say that you shall abstain from participating, or I should say from further participation in the matter. And that would mean including any discussions today or obviously voting on the matter. I don't know if the chair, if you had any specific questions, or if the city administrator had any specific questions you wanted me to address. It is the obligation of the committee members to make that conflict known in advance, and there is an affidavit that you're required to prepare to let the city know that you have a conflict.
I think the only question maybe you might want to address, Carvin, would be, might have been some confusion as our ordinance does not require a public hearing for preliminary and final plats. And so we didn't do a public notice, and letters did not go out saying, you know, if you were within a 200-foot conflict. So regardless of if there's a public hearing or a letter that goes out, it doesn't absolve the conflict of interest if the 200-foot exists, whether a public hearing goes out or not. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. The 200-foot letter is actually just sort of a shorthand way of we lawyers and the courts of assessing whether or not a substantial interest exists. And so when you get a 200-foot letter, that pretty much tells you that the courts are going to determine that you have an economic interest in the outcome of the vote, and that cues you in that probably you need to file your affidavit and that you should abstain from participating. But that doesn't mean that there aren't occasions when you might have a conflict in other circumstances. But the 200-foot line is an easy, or the 200-foot letter, I should say, is an easy test, but it's not the only test by any means.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Atkins. If we
I
could.
must say, Chair, if I could interrupt you one more time, I apologize.
Sure.
As members of the commission, you guys have the right to call on me and ask me in advance. So your duty under both the code and the statute is to make your decision in advance of the meeting. So I would advise all of you, if you think you have a conflict, the best time is to call ahead of the meeting and give us both some time to evaluate whether it's truly a conflict. Oftentimes it turns out not to be a technical conflict, but my best advice to you right now is in an abundance of caution. If we don't have time to look at whether you have a conflict, my advice would be for you to assume that you do have a conflict and that you should abstain from participating. There's just really no reason to risk taking the risk of participating if we haven't had time to think about it ahead of time. I apologize for interrupting, Chair.
That's fine. Thank you very much. That's good information to have. I was just going to remind everybody that they might have their mute button on, except when they want to talk. We've got some background noise there going on. Thank you very much. At this time, I will ask that our alternate number 1, Ms. Christy King, be seated as our 5th member for this meeting. Also at this time, I want to read a short statement. I, as chair of the Rome Planning and Zoning Commission, would like to make a statement concerning the confusion surrounding the recent actions of this commission. Having been tasked by our Rome City Council to review the City of Rome Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14 zoning, and our comprehensive plan, and make recommendations to them of any changes we see and to update the plan to better reflect the current needs and wants of the citizens of Rome, we are guided by city staff to first have a more current plan created with the help of professionals and the input of the citizens of Rome. This process took time, but with the new plan, we had a guide of how the city wanted to develop and grow. We decided to start with looking at the downtown area. We saw that there was an overlay created back in 2004 describing a zoning classification named Old Town Rome. This also had a map created with boundaries that were difficult to distinguish that we also felt encompassed an area larger than intended or needed. We, as a group of commission members from several areas of town, worked to redraw the boundaries to make better sense of what our new comprehensive plan describes as an area of town that would consist of a mixed-use area of single-family homes along with retail commercial businesses that would best fit in this part of town, and to include walking paths, meeting areas, small parks, and adequate parking and lighting. In other words, the feel of what Old Town Rome means to the citizens who live here. It was never the intention of this commission to attempt to rename anything but a classification of a zone on paper for the purpose of promoting the area when interested businesses or people inquired about locating within this area of town, and to better align it with the verbiage contained within the new comprehensive plan. It was never the intent to rename any part of Rome. With this said, I plan to continue with the help of my current commissioners, our city council, city staff, and engineering firm to update the content within our zoning ordinances. Thank you very much. With that, we will move on to public presentations and input. The commission is not permitted to take action on or discuss any presentations made to the commission at this time concerning an item not listed on the agenda. The commission will hear comments on specific agenda items during this designated time. Request form must be filled out and submitted via email to citysecretary@cityofrome.com prior to 4 p.m. to be recognized. I will refer to our city secretary, Ms. Shannon Montgomery. Do we have any public presentations this evening?
Yes, sir. We have one, and it's Rick King. Mr. King, are you on the call? Mr. King? Mr. King? I can't hear you. I can see you, but I cannot hear you. Chair, he wanted to speak on agenda item D. Do we want to give him some time to see if he can get his audio working and come back to him?
We can try again before we move to our public hearing right after agenda item A, yes.
Okay, we'll try again, Mr. King.
Okay, with that, we will move on to our regular agenda, old business. Item A, discussion and any necessary action regarding the minutes of September 14th, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission special session. Do we have any changes that need to be made by any of the commissioners seated here?
Make a motion, we accept the minutes.
Okay, I have a motion to accept the minutes as written. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And that was who?
Christy Niren.
Christine Aaron, thank you. I'll run down the line, and if everybody just say aye or nay. Commissioner Steve Knight, aye. Commissioner Christine Aaron,
Aye.
thank you. Commissioner Thomas Cannon,
Aye.
thank you. Commissioner Robert Coleman,
Robert Coleman, aye.
Commissioner Christy King.
Aye.
Motion passed, minutes approved. Thank you very much. Did we have any luck yet here, Shannon?
Mr. King?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right, I switched to my phone, so
Okay.
sorry about that. Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, my name is Ricky King, and I live at 207 Cheyenne Trail North in Rome. I come to you tonight to share my input on agenda item D, which is the Rolling V Ranch #1, specifically phase 3, which according to the preliminary plat, will place home lots immediately behind the easternmost street of the Chisholm subdivision, Cheyenne Trail North and Cheyenne Trail South. It should be noted that this street of houses is the only street that is affected in this manner. All other areas platted adjacent to the schools and the Ellis Homestead have a green space as a buffer. As a member of the Rome community for the past 16 years, my neighbors and I have been under the impression that the land which skirts our back fences was designated as a right-of-way easement. Based on information received from the city administrator today, it appears that while the previous owner of the Rolling Bee Ranch may have used the land as such, there was never any official designation of an easement in this location. According to the city administrator, this is a preliminary platting of an ETJ property in which no previous plat existed. Therefore, city ordinance did not require a 200-foot notice be provided to the homeowners on Cheyenne Trail North or South. Had the notice been provided in a good faith effort, the maps the commission is reviewing tonight been readily available to the public, we might have had more of a voice tonight. I asked that the commission implore the developer to revisit the preliminary plat and consider placing even a small amount of open green space between the homes on Cheyenne Trail North and South and the new homes behind them. While I absolutely support change and the positive impact this development will have in the Rome community, I also respectfully ask that the PMB developers do the neighborly thing, for lack of a better term, and revise the preliminary plat to include open green space where it already exists behind the homes on Cheyenne Trail North and South. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. King. Chair Knight, that was the only one to sign up.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to state that Mr. Thomas Cannon is recusing himself from item B and C, and I will seat our alternate number 2, Ms. Joanne Wilson, for both item B and C. Moving on to our public hearing portion, item B, Rome Planning and Zoning Commission to conduct a public hearing to consider a request for a carport excuse me, at legal property being legal acres 0.209, lot 2, block 1, subdivision Rolling Hills Addition, also known as 321 Redbud, Rome, Texas 76078. It is now 6:19. I will open the public hearing on agenda item B. Anyone wishing to make a public comment, please direct your comments towards the commission and provide relevant factual information which is pertinent to this application by stating your name and address when our city secretary calls on you one at a time. As this is a public hearing for the purpose of allowing the public to voice any concerns and comments and whether they are for or against this request and reasons thereof, the members of the commission will not be responding to any statements or questions. We will also limit all comments to 3 minutes for the purpose of maintaining the fluency of this meeting. Thank you. I will now defer to our city secretary, we'll defer to our city secretary, Shannon Montgomery, to take our first speaker. Please state your name and address.
Chair Knight, we did not receive any speaker requests, but we did receive a notification reply in the mail, and it was from James Humphreys, and he is in favor of the proposed carport request.
Okay, do we have anybody online with any comments from?
The property owner, Mr. Randy Murdoch, was supposed to be here. Is he here?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Would you like to address the commission members during this time, sir?
All I really need is just to find out whether or not it's going to work or not.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you being here.
Do we have any other public input? Shannon?
It does not look so.
Okay, it is 6:22. I will close the public hearing at this time. We'll move on to our regular agenda, new business. Item C, discussion and any necessary action considering a recommendation to council regarding a request for a carport at property being described as legal acres 0.209 lot 2 block 1 subdivision Rolling Hills Addition, also known as 321 Redbud, Rome, Texas 76078. And now I'd like to defer to our city administrator, Ms. Cynthia Northrup, for the background on this. Cynthia?
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. You have an agenda commentary in your packet, and I've included the applicable ordinances for this for your convenience. I wanted to bring to your attention that as most of you know, this is a special use permit. Carports do require at least 10 feet from the property line and at least 5 feet from the public right of way. Additionally, since Mr. Murdoch does reside within the current boundaries of the Old Town Rome Overlay District, provides special considerations with respect to carports which extend 25 feet from the front setback. He meets all the requirements except for the 10-foot side property line. He is actually 7.5 feet from the side property line. You do have some pictures that were included in your packet of that, as well as some drawings. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. We had one that was similar, as a reminder, back in March that was similar, and I believe actually it was even a little bit closer, like 5 feet from the property line.
Okay. Mr. Murdoch, and I assume you've looked everything over and that's just what works best with your driveway where it's at now?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. I'll poll the other commissioners here for any input on this. Anybody?
Robert Coleman's here.
Yes, Robert.
So is any additional concrete going to be poured for that driveway, or is this just the carport?
There might be just a little mow strip just to conceal the uprights. And that'd be it. It wouldn't be no more than about a foot.
Okay. So the picture of the driveway and the drawing are a little bit different. That's why I was asking.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what are you saying, about 8, 9, 10 inches or so?
Yes, sir. No more than a foot.
Okay. That's all I got.
Anybody else? Okay, with that, excuse me? With that, it looks like we have granted these kinds of, or recommended these kind of variances to the city council on previous carports. I would make a motion on this one to approve the city council upon them granting that 10-foot variance from the property line requirement for approval. Do I have a second?
This is Joanne Wilson. I second it.
I think I heard Mr. Coleman first. I have a.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, Robert Coleman, second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. I'll run down the line and we'll vote on this. Commissioner Steve Knight, aye. Commissioner Christine Aaron.
Aye.
Commissioner Robert Coleman.
Aye.
Commissioner Christy King.
Aye.
Commissioner Joanne Wilson.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll pass that on to City Council.
Chair, can you just clarify that the motion was to recommend approval to council subject to council granting that variance to that 10-foot property line requirement?
That's exactly what I meant to say.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you hear that in there?
Okay. We've got some noise coming on. Can somebody mute their mic for us? Okay. Our regular agenda. Let's see here, a second. Okay, at this time, I'll announce the return of Mr. Thomas Cannon to the seat, and I will state that Ms. Christy King is recusing herself for item D from the agenda, and our alternate number 2, Ms. Joanne Wilson, will remain seated. We'll move on to item D from our agenda, new business. Discussion and any necessary action considering a recommendation to council regarding a proposed preliminary plat for Rolling V Ranch, RVR number 1, phases 1 through 3, being described as 219.23 acres, 697 lots, 3.18 lots AC, 31 open spaces, approximately 51.06 AC out of the James B. Farnsworth survey, abstract number 1417 and 991, Jacob Moffett survey, abstract number 554, Smith County School Land Survey, abstract number 743, in the city of Rome, ETJ, Wise County, Texas, as requested by P&B Rolling V Land LP. I'll defer once again to our city administrator, Cynthia Northrup, for staff reports and comments and an explanation of what our part in this process is.
Thank you, Chair. Chair and Commissioners, I know this is a big preliminary plat, and you probably haven't seen anything like this in Rome. So I wanted to take this opportunity and just remind you, whether it's 1 or whether it's 500, what we're doing with our preliminary plats, final plats, and really the platting process in general. The platting process in general is really legally defining the subdivision of land. This is a little bit different for a couple of reasons. Number one, it is in our ETJ. So while we do have an interlocal with Wise County to take over oversight of the platting process within our extraterritorial jurisdiction, we don't have we don't have the same authority in our ETJs as we do within our city limits. So with that being said, we also have not only our ordinance, state law, state statute, and our ordinances, but we have a development agreement with Rolling V Ranch on this entire process that pretty much outlines the criteria that the developer must meet. And that staff, I will say staff has met with the developer's team, and that includes all of our staff and our engineer as well. And right now, what you see before you complies and meets all the criteria in our ordinances and in the development agreement. So at this point, it really is a ministerial process, and we do have our attorney here, and he can give you the legal definition of what that really means. Certainly, I wanted to, because we hadn't seen this type of a plat before, I wanted to take this time to try to remind you all of what that process looks like going forward. And if there's any questions that you all have, certainly we want to try to answer those. But at the end of the day, they have met the criteria that they're required to meet, and the engineer has reviewed it. The attorneys and our city staff has reviewed it. So we are recommending approval to council. Carvin, did you want to touch on the ministerial aspect of the platting process in general, and then how that applies within an ETJ?
Well, Cynthia, you've stolen all of my thunder. I would just second what Cynthia has just told you. She has stated it correctly. As a P&Z, and then frankly, even as the city council later on, you don't have a whole lot of margin here to change things. If she mentioned the key phrase and the key question that you would want to ask as a commission member is, has the engineer reviewed it? Is the engineer satisfied that it meets the requirement in this case of our development agreement? Because in our development agreement, we have set out the requirements for all of this. And if the answer you receive back from staff as a matter of law, you really have no option other than to approve it. And that's what it means when we get to the phrase ministerial act. You don't have a lot of discretion. You have to approve it if the engineer and staff have confirmed that it meets all the requirements of our agreement in this case. The other cases may be a little different, but in this case, we have a very comprehensive agreement that was negotiated at length between the city and the developer, or the original developer, and it lays out the rules and procedures. So at the end of the day, your question really is pretty simple. Does it meet the requirements of the agreement that we reached with the developer?
Thank you, Carvin. I did ask Peter Pinkoff to attend tonight. He is here. And, I just wanted to, I know he has presented to council, and I wanted to give you all the opportunity to at least meet him and hear from him kind of just kind of a general overview of the property and what they plan for. So Peter, are you there? I see you now.
I'm here. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Well, it's nice to meet all of you, and I appreciate your time this evening and the opportunity to share a little bit about the project. And at some point here, look forward to being able to meet everybody in person, which I trust is going to come here at some point. So we're thrilled to be involved in the Rolling V project. We love the ranch and have spent a great deal of time over the last several years sort of preparing for this point. And so tonight we're submitting the first couple of preliminary plats, of which there will be many over the years, and starting to sort of really lay out what the development's gonna look like. And we have received a tremendous amount of interest from prospective home builders, of which we've selected a handful that will be building in the project. There's a significant amount of interest from prospective home buyers, and this ought to be, one of the most sort of active master plan communities in DFW in the next couple of years, just based on that interest. And so we're anxious to get started. We're very focused on really protecting a lot of the key features of the property as we see them, including just some phenomenal lakes that are adjacent to this preliminary plat that you're looking at. There's about a 20-acre lake there that we call Lake Eloise, and then a series of creeks that are dammed up and constant level down below Lake Eloise, kind of closer to being across from Chisholm. And there'll be a lot of open space in the project, a lot of features that are open and available to the community, both inside our development, but also the broader community. And so it's sort of with that focus, both meeting the market demand and protecting and honoring some really key features of the property that we move the development forward. I'm glad to answer any questions I can for you guys on the plats specifically tonight, but as Carvin and Cynthia outlined, I think we've satisfied the obligations under the development agreement and gotten approval from the engineer, and so we're anxious to get it moving forward.
Now we have Kyle here. Kyle, is there anything, he's with Kim Lehorn, he's the lead engineer on this. Is there anything that you would want to add that I left out that I should have added?
No, I think you hit everything spot on. So we'll be seeing more of this as the development splits out into the multiple phases and goes through the final planning process and construction plan review. And so there will be more information to come. But in terms of the preliminary plat, they've met all the requirements of the ordinances and developers agreement. So.
Chair, I would turn it back over to you or commission members if there's any other questions or.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. No, that was good information. We now know what this process is, and this is a preliminary plat. It's not like a final design with pictures and all that. It is just laying out the way the land's gonna be used. If I have any questions from my commissioners first?
This is Joanne Wilson. I'm sorry, I think I spoke over Mr. Coleman.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Joanne.
I was curious what Mr. King was talking about previously, green space, et cetera. Does this affect anything that we're looking at here?
I had talked earlier, I think, as I understand it, on this, you can see right here is the back side of Chisholm and homes on Cheyenne Trail. And if you look on Google Maps, and I had visited with Peter Pinkos about this earlier, but this looks like the fence for the ranch is actually right here. So for several years, they've had this buffer. I don't know. I mean, as we've indicated, there's not an easement here. Apparently homeowners are under the impression that there was an easement and that houses would not abut right up to the back of them. But the property line, the city limits line is the back of their property here. And the property of Rolling V Ranch is in between there. So I think just the way that it's been for several years has maybe been a little bit confusing, but the actual property line of the ranch is right here at the back side of their property.
Cynthia, can you show us that on your screen
Can you not see that?
so I can see what it is you're talking about? No, ma'am.
Can't see my screen?
No, ma'am.
And I don't have a monitor. I'm just on the phone.
Yeah, I can see your screen. It's Google Maps.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are fairly
Okay.
good lot sizes. What size lots are going to back up to those houses there?
Let's see.
Well, you can see, I mean, again, I'm going to put up the map, but that's, if you look on your index sheet, I mean, here is the plat we're talking about. This is the area that we're talking about. And I'm going to zoom in. So you can see they've got a graph down here, and they've given some presentations of the different phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, the different sizes of lots that will be throughout this phase. But again, that is really, that's set by, I mean, they're in the ETJ, so those are, I mean, it's set by the development agreement. So those are.
I'm just thinking that maybe a larger lot size would butt up against the existing lot sizes. That's my concern there.
All I can add,
Cynthia,
or Chair, at this point is there's no legal grounds for denying the application at this point based on that request.
So we shouldn't ask the question then.
You can certainly ask the question. There's no legal basis for the city to require that for approval.
Yeah, I think as they had explained to us, this is in a developer's agreement, and as long as that's met, why this is like you said, just something for us to go through the process on. Any other comments from any of us?
Yeah, I do. What kind of barriers are going to be between the existing subdivision there and the new subdivision? Will there be any kind of, like you said, green spaces? And if not, will there be any kind of walls demarcating the two subdivisions? New and old.
Yeah, this is Peter Pinkoffs. I think you can expect there to be in between the subdivisions board-on-board cedar fence, and that would be on the property line, and create effectively a new rear yard fence for the folks that live there on Cheyenne Trail, and would also be that's something we would be building, or our builders would, and would be the backyard fence for those lots that are being added right there.
Okay. And what kind of timelines are we looking at here, starting and finishing each phase?
So the market's going to impact some of that, and just the process to get through plan review as well. But our goal is to start construction as early next year as possible, January or so of 2021 on the first phase. The first phase is not going to be, it won't reach all the way down to the area that you all are talking about. It'll be up sort of adjacent to Lake Eloise and on the north side of Chisholm. And it will take about 12 to 15 months to build that phase from the time that we start. So that puts you in early to mid 2022. And then at that point, the lots are complete, the streets are in, the water system and sewer system is in, and the builders start construction on homes. And then I would anticipate that we would start construction on phase 2 very soon, if not right away after phase 1 is complete.
Do you have anything to do with like internet services, or will that be some other entity?
No, we do. We'll arrange, you know, all the franchise utilities, electric, gas, cable, internet will all be arranged by us. And you can expect, I don't know what your specific question is, but you can expect that it will be some of the fastest internet available in the Metroplex, given the size of the project and the groups that are involved. But it'll be fiber.
Yeah, right now we have CenturyLink, and at my house, the most I can get is 8 meg down, like less than a meg up. And most people here use wireless. And so I can imagine what this additional housing is going to do to that bandwidth there. So
we'll have fiber optic in the ground to every home.
Okay.
Within the master plan community.
That's correct.
Okay, do I have any other questions?
Steve, not specifically related to this, but do we owe Mr.
Well, we
King
need to keep it
anything?
related. We really should keep it related to what we're designed to do here.
No, I have a question that was Mr. King y'all talked with before this one. Does that involve anything with this layout?
Well, yes, it's Joanne, as I understand it, yes, it does. However, what I've spent some time to try to explain is that this is in our ETJ, so it's not within the city. We are looking at the preliminary plat, and the commission members, nor council for that matter, have a lot of discretion in, well, any discretion in going outside the development agreement that it supersedes everything. As far as that goes, it's, yeah, those are the criteria that
yeah, I realize that. I just, didn't know how we left it with Mr. King. So that'll be a subject for another meeting or what?
But,
there's really not another forum. I mean, the P&Z will take its action tonight. And if Mr. King wants to bring up another comment at some point with the city council, he can. But I think what we've heard tonight from the city engineer's office and from the other staff is that this development, as presented, meets the requirements of our agreement with the developer. And at this point, we cannot force the developer to do anything. If the developer decides that he would like to try and make some change, that's up to the developer. But the city has no standing to force an agreement on the developer at this point.
And I realize that, Carvin. I just, I hate to have somebody come to the P&Z and us brush them off, kind of. But anyhow, as far as the plats and everything, I think we should go forward with it.
Yeah, I was just going to see if there's any more questions on what our process is here, as far as questions on what we can and can't do. I think that's pretty well been answered.
Can we,
Steve, from everybody. Tom?
Question.
Yes.
Can we at least maybe respectfully ask for easements or bigger lot sizes there,
Well,
approved
I
it.
think we
Don't have a choice.
leave that up to, we would leave that up to city council, because this isn't a development agreement that they've entered into with this gentleman.
Correct. I mean, you can always ask. It doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Yeah. I believe I haven't heard though from Christy Narron. Any questions at all?
No, sir, I don't have any questions.
Okay. With that said, I'm
I
going
mean,
to
I
make a
had
mo-
questions, but we went over it.
Okay,
I
thank you.
apologize.
With that, I'm going to make a motion that we approve this and send it on to council. Do I
I'll
have a second?
I second.
I've got a second with Christy. We'll run down and vote here. Commissioner Steve Knight, aye. Commissioner Christy Narron,
Aye.
Commissioner Thomas Cannon,
Aye.
Commissioner Robert Coleman,
No.
Commissioner Joanne Wilson.
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll send that on to city council. And we'll move
Chair,
on to, yes,
Chair, I'd like
yes.
to just address one comment, just for the record, to let people know that the city council has talked with the developer on several occasions. The mayor and council have talked about this development agreement in the past. And so, you know, certainly the city council has had some of the same concerns, and they've been, you know, negotiating, if you will, with the developer. And so they have actually heard some of those things. Now, it doesn't mean that they still can't hear more comments from neighbors at this point in time, but I certainly want it to be on the record that, I mean, there has been several conversations between the mayor and council and the developers in negotiating the development agreement overall with as much authority as they have. They can only legally do so much because it is in the ETJ.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to our regular agenda, new business, item E. Discussion and any necessary, oh, excuse me, before I do that, I need to announce that the return of Miss Christy King and that Mr. Robert Coleman will be recusing himself from item E, with Miss Joanne Wilson remaining seated. Moving on to regular agenda, new business, item E. Discussion and any necessary action considering a recommendation to council regarding a proposed preliminary plat for Rolling V Ranch, RVR number 2, phases 1 through 2. This being described as 186.19 acres, 513 lots, 2.76 lots AC, 68.90 AC, 19 open spaces out of the Smith County School Land Survey, abstract number 743, in the city of Rome, ETJ, Wise County, Texas, as requested by PMB Rolling V Land LP. We're pretty well looking at the same thing on this, but I will turn it over to Cynthia for a quick notation on that.
Sure. Well, again, and I won't repeat everything, but again, just really focusing on the ministerial duties of the commission. All the requirements of the development agreement and our ordinances have been met. We have reviewed this with staff, with our engineers, and we have what you see before you. Now this is number 2, which is on the west side of 3433, of course. And these, if you have any questions, we've still got Mr. Peter Pinkoff here, and the engineer is here as well.
Well, I don't know that we'd have any questions. We've pretty well covered it on the first one, and this is just kind of a repeat, only with different property. Do I have any questions, though? I'll open it up for that.
My only, this is Christy King. My only comment would be that it appears that on number 2, if that's what we're calling it, on number 2 on the west side of 3433, there just appears to be ample green spaces. It looks very well laid out, and it does look like there's kind of a buffer there with the Ellis Homestead, and then just lots of green space.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll make the same motion that we approve this to City Council for their approval. As stated,
I'll second that motion.
I have a second from Tom. We'll go down the line again. Steve Knight, aye. Christy Narron,
Aye.
Thomas Cannon,
Aye.
Christy King,
Aye.
Joanne Wilson,
Aye.
motion passes. Thank you very much. With that, I'll announce the return of Mr. Coleman and thank Ms. Joanne Wilson for her participation this evening. Thank you. Do I have any future agenda items? If you think of any, just email them to City Secretary and we will see about adding them to our next meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, who's this? I've got two
Christy
Christys here.
Narron.
Christy Narron.
Christy Narron.
Thomas with my motion. We'll go down the line one more time. Steve Knight, aye. Christy Narron,
Aye.
Thomas Cannon,
Aye.
Robert Coleman,
Aye.
Christy King.
Aye.
It is 6:56 p.m. We will adjourn. Thank you very much. Everybody have a wonderful evening.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.